This is kind of a cool photo. It's the magic tree in Columbia, Missouri. This is one of two magic trees. So if you go there in the wintertime, you can see these trees. And last year, almost exactly 1 year ago, I put up a photo on Weekly 50 that was sort of the polar opposite of this. It was one single light bulb on the tree with a whole bunch of other lights behind it. This is the entire tree, and it gives you a much greater sense of what's going on, what this magic tree is all about. It's this big old tree that they wrap in Christmas lights. It's super cool. It's not like a normal Christmas tree with lights around the edge. They wrap like every single branch and twig. The whole tree is wrapped in Christmas lights. It's really something to see. On the night that we went to see it with my wife and my kids and my mother-in-law, there was this gust of wind, and my mother-in-law turns to me at one point and she says, gosh, it'd be really neat if we could get a little video or a moving picture or somehow capture the motion of this tree. And I thought, well, we could do it in a video, but I wanted to try something a little different. I wanted to try a long shutter speed to capture this movement from the wind in a single frame. So I set my tripod down. I had my Fuji X100F and shot in RAW. I set the focus. I set focus manually, and it's got this really good focus peaking that that makes it really easy to photograph and focus manually, especially if it's a static subject like this. And I was able to get, I think I stopped down to f/16, which is as small as that aperture will go in that camera. I used a ISO 200, which is as low as it'll go, and that gave me a shutter speed of about 10 seconds, give or take, to get a properly exposed image. And it wasn't long enough to get a really good sense of motion. So I took several photos at 10 seconds or like around there. I think some might have been like 7, 11 seconds, something like that. And then I realized something kind of obvious, which you probably have already figured out if you have an X100F. It's got a built-in ND filter. And I realized that way too late. And I've used this ND filter many times before, but it was cold. My kids were running around. There was a lot to consider. And it dawned on me that, wait a second, I used that ND filter. So I turned on that ND filter, and it was immediately able to get my 30-second exposure. I could have actually exposed it for a little longer, but I didn't want to calculate an exposure in bulb mode. I just wanted to get a 30-second exposure and be done with it. So I got several of one of the trees, the one to the east, on the east side of town, and then we came back to this tree, which is actually kind of near my in-laws' house on the more on the west side of town. And this tree, I really liked that I was able to capture this gazebo on the side. And something about this kind of stands out to me. Well, several things, I guess. The tree itself and the movement is almost exactly what I had in mind when I was considering this photo. And that you can see the trunk is stationary, but these branches up on top are just waving all over the place like a painting where the painter has just smeared paint all over that top portion. And that's because they were moving so much with the wind. But then on the side, you see this gazebo that's perfectly still. You see these other elements that are totally still, like the street light or street lamp next to the gazebo, and it's got that star point to it because of the small aperture. So many things came together in this image that I was just so pleased with it. I shot it in RAW. I didn't even need to edit much at all because the original looks so good. And I intentionally left it tilted a little bit. My tripod was tilted because I didn't get it quite right. And I straightened it out in Lightroom, but I actually liked it better tilted because I think it sets the viewer a little off balance, just like the tree is like swaying around, and so it's this weird sensation, and even the photo is off kilter just a little bit. So I actually prefer it at the original not level state, which is what you got here. And interestingly enough, while I was taking this, there was another guy who was in the gazebo. I don't think you'd see him here, but he had rented a Panasonic Micro Four Thirds camera, and I think it was like a G9 maybe. And he was playing around with his fisheye lens. He was shooting with like a 4mm lens or something insane that he had rented. So afterwards, I got to walk up to him and we chatted for a bit about camera stuff. And then it was time to get home because we had to get the kids to bed. But it was a really fun evening, and it's always fun to see these magic trees. And I got a really cool photo out of it too. So hope you enjoy it, and thanks to my mother-in-law for suggesting the idea.